to the republic where it stands, one nation.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Fletcher, can you call the roll for a quorum?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Delegate Frederickson,
Here.
Deputy Speaker Frizzell,
Here.
Delegate Fuller. Here. Delegate Gallagher,
Here.
Delegate Gessen,
Here.
Delegate Green, Delegate Harder,
Here.
Delegate Killian,
Here.
Delegate King,
Here.
Delegate McKelvey,
Here.
Delegate O'Malley,
Here.
Dean Omen, Delegate Sampson,
Here.
Delegate Ty,
Here.
Speaker Warner.
Here.
Madam Speaker, that is 13 members representing 92.03% of the population, and Delegate Gessen and Delegate Sampson are participating remotely.
You didn't do that? No. Okay, there's definitely a quorum for the of the assembly for this meeting. Next on the calendar is the approval of journals and minutes. This would you going to take up?
Madam Speaker, I move the approval of the minutes of March 18, 2026.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the journal. Are there any corrections? Yes,
I do believe I received one from Deputy Speaker Frizzell. I will add that to the.
okay.
Yeah.
Madam Speaker, it's not substantive. It's
Okay, the question is on for the approval of the journal for the Assembly of Delegates regular meeting on March 18th. Can you call a roll? Clerk Fletcher, please.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Frizzell.
Yes.
Delegate Fuller.
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Delegate Gessen,
Yes.
Delegate Green, Delegate Harder.
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate King.
Yes.
Delegate McKelvey.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley. Yes. Dean Omen, Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Speaker Warner.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, that's 13 delegates representing 92.30% of the county's population.
I apologize. Next on the calendar is the adoption of the order of business. Can I have a motion to adopt the order of business?
Madam Speaker, I move that we approve the order of business.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? No? Okay. Clerk Fletcher, can you call the roll on whether to adopt the order of business?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Frizzell,
Yes.
Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Delegate Gessen,
Yes.
Delegate Green, Delegate Harder.
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate King.
Yes.
Delegate McKelvey,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley. Yes. Dean Omen, Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Speaker Warner.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, still 13, 92.30% of the county's population.
The motion passes. Next on the business calendar is Committee of the Whole. Can I have a motion to enter the Committee of the Whole to the consider match communications in items 9 and 10 informally?
Madam Speaker, I move that we enter into the committee of the whole to consider communications in items 9 and 10.
Second.
Okay. There is a motion with a second to enter into Committee of the Whole. Is there any discussion? Okay. The question is entering into the Committee of the Whole. Clerk Fletcher, can you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Frizzell.
Yes.
Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Delegate Gessen,
Yes.
Delegate Green, Delegate Harder.
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate King,
Yes.
Delegate McKelvey,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley. Yes. Dean Omen, Delegate Sampson,
Yes.
Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Speaker Warner. 13 representing 92.03% of the county's population. Madam Speaker.
It passes. So we're gonna go to public comment
Sure.
first, huh?
Yep.
Next on the calendar is communications from members of the public and officials. First, we have general public comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to anything either on this calendar or in general? Please come forward and tell us who you are and what precinct you're.
I see him. Okay, Ken Barron, Town of Barnstable. I came here for a different agenda, but apparently that's not on the agenda, so I respect the rules of order here and not discuss it at this time. One thing I do see that I'd like to discuss about the sewerage of Cape Cod, about this loan. This is on number 13. Is that on tonight's agenda? About loans to residents and about septic systems inclusive of Hookup as well. Little comment, I've been going to a couple meetings in the town of Barnstable. This covers all of Cape Cod. I've been going to meetings at the town of Barnstable, and the communication director was very good, has been giving us details on this. Well, unfortunately, the details have been changing as time goes by. I understand that because this is a very complex project. It's stretching over decades, unfortunately. But it's gone from, even at the last meeting in Barnstable, it went for a cost after a tax credit of $7,000 per person for the sewer hookup to the end of the night where they're proposing a $17,000 assessment. Okay, time frame, who knows when that's going to happen. But perhaps at some point in time, we could get some clarity for the public because it's our money personally, each person, that has to be spent on these projects, whether it's the assessment and the sewer hookup from your house to the street, or if you're not going to get a hookup, you have to go through the. Thank you. It won't be long. You have to go spend money. Quotes $35,000 plus to have a nitrogen removal system. So perhaps as time goes by, if we can get more accurate updates for that, it will really be helpful to the public. You know, just all of a sudden somebody doesn't wake up one morning and say it's going to cost you $70,000 for this nitrogen removal system, and that's a lot of money. Also, what was discussed was you can get a loan, which I believe this addresses from the I believe the town of Barnstable. This, I don't know if this means this is statewide or countywide, but they said that it's going to be 2% above the borrowing rate. I kind of question that agenda. Why would they charge the public who's already paying for this an extra 2%? Why can't they get it just at the borrowing rate and not have the town tack on a fee to that as well? People are being strained financially just for this whole project, okay? And I went to another meeting in Eastham, which directly involves this sewer hookup, but also involves the housing being built all over Cape Cod. They contradict each other. There was a great presentation there about the water aquifer, poisoning the ponds, poisoning the ocean, and yet we still overbuild Cape Cod, causing the problems to be even worse. This has to be addressed and perhaps given a pause in proceeding with this building. That's it. Thank you very much. Just if you could just tackle those issues, I would appreciate it.
No? Okay. First, we just did public comment, so now we're going to, next we have a presentation on the Board of Regional Commissioners resolution authorizing an election upon the question of creating a charter study commission from Attorney Lauren Goldberg, KP Law, County Counsel. Attorney Goldberg. Over to
Hello,
you.
Madam Speaker. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. I first of all, thank you and the Assembly for having me here today. I am going to share, I'm going to try to share. Owen knows that sometimes that can be a struggle for me, but I'm going to try and share a PowerPoint that I prepared. And if not, then perhaps Owen could run it from his screen, and I could help him know when to share his slides. So I'm not having great success. Owen, are you able to assist, or Madam Chair?
I should be. Give me 1 second. Try pulling that down and I'll try on my end.
Oops, is that actually being shared? I did not know that. Wonderful.
Just let me know when you'd like me to advance the slide.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Clerk. All right, so I thought we would just go over kind of the charter amendment processes, what we're doing now versus what we've done in the past, and just talk a little bit about how we got here and where we go from here. So, Owen, you can go ahead and change. This is a disclaimer. I always joke. This is because I'm a lawyer. I'm sorry to put you through it. We'll go to the next slide. What I really thought we would do is kind of just look at the processes for amending the charter. What are the options? What does the charter state, and what does Chapter 801 state, and how does that define what we're able to do? Can we go to the next? So the first thing I wanted to do is have us look at Section 9-1 of the Home Rule Charter. This is the language from the charter, except for the underline, which is the and essentially what Section 9-1 says is we can amend the charter in any of the ways set forth in Section 9-1, and we can amend it using the procedures set forth in Chapter 801. So it means that we have both options available to us, and there is a tenet of statutory construction that says when two things address the same subject matter, we have to try to read them together. So that's where we're going to start out. Oh, and you can change. Okay, so Section 9-1 of the Charter deals with one part of it deals with minor amendments. And I'm going to talk about major amendments in a second. So a minor amendment is something that does not relate in any way to the composition, mode of election, or term of office of the legislative body, the chief executive, or the chief administrative officer. And this language, for those of you who are curious, is very similar to what's found in the quote unquote Home Rule Procedures Act, Chapter 43B, which governs the way that municipalities can adopt charters and change charters without going to the legislature. So a minor amendment is a 2/3 vote of the full membership. The other option that's available is to petition the general court for a special law relating to the county. You can go to the next. Major amendments are handled differently. And basically the charter amendment, if it relates to any of those major amendments, which are bolded here, can be presented to the voters only after enactment by the general court of a special law approving a petition that's been filed by the Assembly of Delegates with the approval of the Board of County Commissioners. So if it's a major amendment, it has to be approved or requested by the Assembly and by the Board of County Commissioners. And that is also consistent with Chapter 43B and the way that amendments are made there. And we can go to the next slide. So Section 9-4 also provides for a periodic charter review. And the reason that I included this slide, obviously the Assembly had appointed a periodic charter review committee. And I just wanted to point out the language in the charter, which says that a periodic review is for review of the then existing charter and ordinances for the purposes of determining if any amendments or revisions may be necessary or desirable. And importantly, it says that the committee has to report back within 10 months with any recommendations to the Assembly of Delegates, not a long time. And in my experience, periodic reviews tend to be focused on a more narrow kind of scope of existing charter and form of government, rather than necessarily considering all of the different permutations of what a county could look like or what a town could look like. More of a look at what we're doing now and whether that's consistent with what the charter says, or whether what we're doing now is inconsistent with what the charter says and we want to make changes to bring it up to date along with changes to reflect changes in substantive Massachusetts general laws that might be more useful in the charter. We could go to the next slide. So this is really a summary of what periodic charter review typically looks like. These are things that are also done during a more holistic review of a charter, whether by an elected charter commission or even by a charter review committee that has a larger scope or larger charge. But these are the types of things that are often done during a periodic charter review. And basically it's the summary is what I just gave. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, Chapter 801 of the Acts of 1985 also addresses charter adoption and charter amendments. And there are essentially three ways to initiate charter adoption, amendment, or revision under sections 3 and 14 of the Chapter 801. So one of the first ones is a resolution by the county commissioners. The second is a resolution by the advisory board on county expenditures, assembly of delegates. And from now on, I'm just going to say assembly of delegates. And the petition of at least 5% of the registered voters of the county at the preceding state election. There is a very important provision in the charter, in Chapter 801, however, that says when a resolution or petition for adoption of a charter, for election of a charter commission is duly filed with the county commissioners, no other resolution, petition, or proceeding can be properly acted upon until the voters reject the question or the study committee is discharged. And this essentially means if we're trying to read those two, Chapter 801 and the charter together, that this limitation on the ability of additional changes to county government to be pushed forward essentially means that once the county commissioners vote, we're kind of frozen in time until we go to the election, where this question of whether to elect a charter commission will be answered. Next slide, please. So Section 8 of Chapter 801 does address an elected charter commission and what it's supposed to do. And it says it's supposed to study the form of government, compare it with other forms available under the laws of the state, determine whether the government of the county could be strengthened, made more clearly responsive or accountable to the people, or whether operation could be more economical or efficient under a changed form of government. And as compared to the periodic charter review we were just discussing, the plain text of this section expressly anticipates a more global review of the charter and of county government. So what does this mean? So coming up, we know that the county commissioners did vote a resolution and forward it to the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office, and that a question will appear on the ballot in November, the state election ballot. The first question is a question of whether to elect a charter commission, and every voter who chooses to exercise their right to vote at that election can choose to say yes or no to that question. Should we elect a charter commission? Yes or no? If the answer is yes or no, the voters can also vote on whether to elect particular candidates. And 15 charter commissioners are also going to be elected on the same ballot, one member by and from the registered voters of each town. And this is significant because that means that even if a voter chooses to say no, they don't want to see an elected charter commission, they still have the right to cast a vote on the particular commissioners that will be elected if the majority of voters say yes. So that is kind of where we are with the ballot, and we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this one is the next few are about kind of what happens once if a charter provision is elected. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. Okay, so if the charter commission is elected, there are some other players that have a seat at the table. So members of the Assembly of Delegates, other than the speaker, because the speaker does have the right to vote and is essentially an ex officio member of the Charter Commission. So members of the Assembly of Delegates, other than the speaker, have the right to participate in the deliberations of the Charter Commission, but not the right to vote, and may endorse or dissent from any report of the commission by virtue of their official advisory role, although they also have the right to make comments as individuals about the process and about the report. And note that it says, or as an elected member of the Charter Commission. In my opinion, this language means that members of the Assembly of Delegates have the right or ability to run for election as a member of the Charter Commission. They're not required to, clearly. If they are not elected as a member of the Charter Commission, they still have the right to participate in those deliberations and not the right to vote. In addition, the county administrator is considered to be a non-voting advisor to the elected commission. The charter, Chapter 801 says the county administrator collects, evaluates, and transmits information and advice that the administrator deems pertinent to the county, its form of government, and its relationship to the state and local governments, and attends commission meetings as requested. And we can go to the next one. I may have skipped, I don't know if it's just the order it's appearing in, but each of the members of the county commission are also people who have the right to vote at Charter Commission meetings. Where it says the 4 non-elected members or their designees on this slide, it means the 3 county commissioners and the Speaker of the Assembly had the right to cast a vote representing the average of the weighted votes of the elected members, and each of the 15 elected members, one from each town in the county and city in the county, have their votes weighted by the populations of their respective towns determined from the most recent federal or state census. The provisions of Chapter 801 says that the county shall provide and the town space for the commission to work, and town shall provide reasonable space for hearings. With respect to finances, the Chapter 801 says that $35,000 shall be made available to the commission with or without appropriation. And it also says that staff may be hired as the commission's account may permit. Next slide, please. In terms of what a charter commission is required to do and what they're required to deliver, the Chapter 801 says they hold public hearings, sponsor public forums, and provide for widespread dissemination of information to the public. It does not specify how many public hearings, how many public forums, how many times the commission needs to meet, the date on which a commission needs to meet, or any other of those particulars that would have to be determined by the Charter Commission itself. Under state law relative to cities and towns, if an elected Charter Commission is created, they have to hold at least one public hearing before they prepare an initial report and one public hearing before they prepare their final report. I did not see similar language in Chapter 801, not that it wouldn't be a bad idea to do anyway. Thereafter, the commission has to provide a quote unquote final report, which would have their findings and recommendations on or before the 18th calendar month after their election. And that report is filed with the county clerk, delivered to all elected county and municipal officials, to the county's legislative delegation, and to the Secretary of the Commonwealth. In addition, it has to be printed and made available at cost to the public at large. And for the printing, it says a number of copies equal to at least 1% of the registered voters as of 40 days before, the most recent primary or general election. I will say clearly Chapter 801 was enacted during a time when there was no such thing as a town or county website. And, there's probably some flexibility there in terms of printing all of those copies, without, adjustment. So that's something to think about. The Charter Commission is also required to publish for 2 successive weeks the full text of the proposed charter or charter amendment, together with a summary of its findings and recommendations, as well as a summary and analysis of those recommendations. So essentially, this is a final report. If the assembly or the county commissioners would like to see some examples, I'm happy to provide them from what municipalities have done recently. And then charter revisions are later presented to the voters at another election. And I think that's a very detailed process. I didn't think that we should get into that right now, but if there is a recommendation for adoption or amendment of the existing charter, the voters would again have the ability to weigh in on that. Next slide, Mr. Clerk. Okay, that brings me to the end. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, Madam Chair, or if I can, respond to anything that you would like me to respond to.
Okay, delegates, do we have questions? All right. Okay, Delegate Hard.
Thank you. Hello, Ms. Goldberg. Good to see you. Two quick questions. It says that while the assembly delegates cannot vote, we can attend every meeting of this commission, that we have to be allowed in to the meetings and be able to discuss.
Yes, Madam Chair, is it okay, or Madam Speaker, is it okay for me to just respond, or should I direct my responses through you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So it does say that the members of the assembly have the right to participate, but not the right to vote. And I would just remind you that that right to participate is limited, as it would always be, to being recognized by the chair. So if a member of the assembly attends the Charter Commission meeting and wants to be heard, the chair of the Charter Commission, they would need to be recognized by the chair of the Charter Commission in order to participate.
Right. And then the other one is, you said they have to have at least 2 public meetings, and aren't all their meetings supposed to be public?
Madam Speaker, through you, it's those were a mention of public hearings. So a public hearing is different than a public meeting. A public hearing is intended to allow the public to provide input on the topics at hand. And in my experience, it is quite typical for a charter commission that's having a public hearing to kind of spread news of that far and wide and encourage members of the public to attend. Oftentimes, those public hearings are really more intended for the public to be heard than for the charter commissioners to respond or become involved in back and forth. It's really an opportunity for the Charter Commission to learn what's important to the public.
If I may just follow up. So that means any Charter Commission meeting will be done in public according to we'll have to follow all open meeting laws, correct?
That is correct. A Charter Commission is subject to the open meeting law. And I can't at this moment think of a reason why one of the exemptions to the open meeting law would apply. I'm not going to say never, because obviously we're just having a general conversation, but I would anticipate that the vast majority, if not all, of the Charter Commission meetings would be in open session. Correct.
Thank you.
Delegate Gessen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I have a couple of quick questions here. So what happens in 2 scenarios? The voters, in the first scenario, they say, no, we don't want the commission. The second scenario, they say, yes, we want a commission. The commission does its report. Then it has to go to the voters again. And the voters reject it. In each of those 2 scenarios, what's the next step? What happens?
Thank you for that question, Madam Speaker, through you. So in my opinion, let's take one at a time. It's probably the same result, but if the voters go to the polls in November and say, we don't want an elected charter commission, there's nothing that's required to happen. The assembly could appoint a committee to review and analyze the need for potential charter change, to review the current form of government, to review how it's working. Similarly, in my opinion, the commissioners could do the same, appoint an advisory committee for the same kind of conversation, and/or the speaker and the county commissioner chair could get together and say, you know what, let's do a joint committee for this. We agree that this is important, and we want to create a joint committee. Any of those options are available but not required. In my opinion, again, if you go through the whole charter commission process, which is essentially a 2-year or close to 2-year process, and the voters say no to proposal that's recommended by the Charter Commission, those same options would be available. I do think it might be appropriate under the circumstances. It's a policy decision to give it a little time, given that you'll have gone through this lengthy process. But that is not up to me in the least. That would be up to the assembly, the county commissioners, or, as I said, some sort of joint committee that's created for those purposes.
You can me to follow up. I would think to some extent the two situations are a little different in that if they say no to the commission, it doesn't mean no to charter change. It just means no, we don't want a commission to do it. So it made some sense for the bodies to get together and do something if they want to do something. On the other hand, if we go through the nearly 2-year process and then the voters say no, it's a pretty strong indication they don't want to change the form of government if they've gone through all that effort and still say no. Future will decide what happens there, but I can see some difference. A follow-up is, you mentioned that delegates are permitted to attend the meetings and to deliberate, even though they have no vote. So let me take that a little further. Can you give us some indication or guidance before we even get to the point of a commission, what the assembly as a whole and/or any individual member of the assembly can say with respect to the idea of even having the commission?
Certainly, and I just want to start with Madam Speaker, through you, with your first comment first. It's possible that if the county goes through this whole nearly 2-year process and votes no on what's been recommended by the Charter Commission, that could similarly mean, as you suggested, that they just are saying no to that charter recommendation and not necessarily to charter change at all. So I just, again, we're not able to predict exactly what the voters might be thinking. The takeaways may depend on what the discussions are around that process. As to what an individual member of the assembly or the assembly itself can say and do, the assembly members are elected. They have the right to, their own opinions about things under the conflict of interest law and under the campaign finance law. And so the members would be permitted to weigh in publicly. The assembly could take a vote as to whether it supports or doesn't support the idea of a charter commission as well. And I just want to point out, I'm not saying that any of these things are good or bad. I'm just saying that those are options. What is important is that, and the same thing goes for the county commissioners, I should point out. They have the same rights as elected officials. So what isn't okay is to use county resources for the purpose of influencing the outcome of an election. And in that regard, I don't just mean, is the assembly able to talk about this at a public meeting? Yes. Are the county commissioners able to do that? Absolutely. Can you expend money, time, employee resources for the purpose of analyzing the impact of the ballot question and analyzing the impact of having an elected charter commission versus making an appointed charter committee, something like that. Absolutely, that is all fine. And you all as elected officials, the assembly as one entity and the county commission as another elected entity, have the right to ask your staff persons to look at these things. What you cannot do, and this is just kind of a general statement, is force information on individual voters who may not want it. So what that means is, for example, let's say hypothetically the assembly takes a vote and adopts a statement and has the staff do an analysis of the different ways that elected charter commissions are good or bad. Can that information be made available to the public? Yes, but only if they ask for it. So that means you couldn't do a mailing using the county's mail number, and you couldn't do an email to every person on Cape Cod about this. What you can do is make it known that this information is available. So for example, if there was something posted on a website that a voter can click on, that's perfectly acceptable for purposes of the conflict of interest law and the campaign finance law. What it means though is that if I go to the county's website and before I even click on something, pop-up comes up saying, vote yes or vote no, that isn't allowable because that is more like an unrequested bit of information. So a lot of municipalities will use, they have their listservs and they push information out all the time. So one of the kind of best practices way to do that is to say, if you're interested in more information about X, click here or visit our website here, versus putting all of that information directly in the listserv. Same thing with social media. It's okay for the county to use or the assembly to use its social media for that same kind of communication. Always, keeping in mind that it is better and more consistent with the law to use a clickable type of option. And for your information, I can certainly forward this. I apologize, I didn't put anything in the presentation about it, but the Office of Campaign and Political Finance has two very good publications. Informational Bulletin, it's so IB 91-1 and IB 92-2 are both about the expenditure of public resources in connection with ballot questions. And the State Ethics Commission has an advisory, I believe it's 11-1, but I'll double check, that explains the limitations on the activities of both elected and appointed officials and employees in cities and towns and in the county with respect to campaigning, whether it's political campaigning with respect to a ballot question, or campaigning, kind of on the employee's own time for their own purposes. So with those three documents as guidance documents, I do think, there are lots of ways that the county can communicate with voters. And I think it is well recognized that communication is important, as long as it's done in a way that lets the voter essentially choose how involved they want to be.
Over to Delegate Gessen, followed by Delegate O'Malley.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Ms. Goldberg, for the presentation. I'm just looking at Chapter 801. Looks like the bulk of Chapter 801, after it goes through how the Charter Commission works, is really the three optional forms that the Charter Commission can adopt. However, those optional forms, and then my understanding is, the Charter Commission has two options: either adopt an optional form, or create a special charter recommendation, which my understanding is what it did originally with the current charter we have now. And the difference between those two is that with a special charter like the one we have with, an assembly of delegates and Board of Commissioners, that needed to go to the legislature first and then come back to the voters and get adopted that way versus if one of the optional forms is recommended by the Charter Commission, they simply send that directly to the voters and then the voters vote it up and down, and that's all that needs to be for adoption. My main question is those optional forms, the way they're described in 801, really touch on just the form of government. They don't touch necessarily on the power to tax, power of eminent domain, or a number of other things that are covered in the charter. And that's pretty much left open-ended in Chapter 801. It just says whatever powers are granted by the legislature is the power that will be granted to the county. So my question is, if the Charter Commission moves forward with one of the optional forms that doesn't need additional ratification by the legislature, what happens to all those pre-enumerated powers that the county currently has? Do they get grandfathered in from the current charter? Do they need to get reapproved by the legislature? Would any charter that has those automatically be considered a special charter? I hope that question makes sense.
Yeah, Madam Chair, through you. So as you describe it, Chapter 801 was adopted when there were optional forms of county government, essentially. And as we know, that's really changed since that time. And it's likely that any charter or any adoption of a new charter or an amendment to an existing charter would be the kind of thing that went to the general court. However, I think it's important to recognize that when we move from one to the next, we can put language into that charter, whatever it's going to be, that secures those things for the county. And so, my expectation would be that whatever the new charter, if a charter commission is adopted, that whatever is recommended, that there will be some care to make sure that that language is in there that continues to provide the county with the authority it has. There are other types of things, talking about taxation and what rights the county may have to tax residents that may need to be further explained or explored given the changes to county government since the charter, the current home rule charter was adopted.
Just a quick follow-up, Madam Speaker, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
With that, and that was kind of my understanding of the way 801 works, but still back to the question of if an optional form is adopted in 801 that doesn't necessarily have to go to the general court, would grandfathering in the way you described any of these provisions automatically kind of make it into a special form that needs to go to the legislature? Or is there like an optional form amendment that doesn't need to go, or is this just unknown?
Madam Speaker, through you, I think unknown is probably the right answer. And the reason is, again, things are so different since those optional forms of county government existed. And I think whoever, winds up working on for the commission with the commission is going to have to do some digging on these issues. I think as both the assembly and the county commissioners know, your charter has lots of interesting provisions that kind of swing back and forth between things that are found in state law and not found in state law, things that are silent in the charter that are addressed in state law. And one of the benefits, however the charter is reviewed and revised in the future, really will be to try and make some sense out of those kind of discrepancies and provide a holistic way of dealing with those things. So I always say, and how relevant this is today is questionable, but I always say, don't start with how are we going to do it? Start with what do we need to do? And then once you know what you want to do, then start thinking about what's the mechanism to make this happen. And I think, it's, when people start talking about, is this a major amendment? Is it a minor amendment? And can we use the minor amendment version of things? It really is important to look at what the commission or the committee is looking to accomplish. And then you can make the mechanism for getting that passed or approved fit the bill. If there's these kinds of changes that require a special act before the charter can be presented to the voters, so be it. Then that's the route it would take. The other thing is we are lucky that the state Senate and the House of Representatives, have their own counsel as well. And they're typically willing to consult when requested by their, by their members on issues like this. And I think, again, whether it's an elected charter commission or some other form of charter review, at some point, it will be good to get their impressions on how they see things moving forward, as well as to consult with the Secretary of the Commonwealth, since he would be the one at the, to put the question on the ballot, whatever it might be. So those state resources will be useful to whatever kind of progress is going to be made on these issues.
Of course. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Delegate O'Malley.
That right down. Sorry. Thank you. Counselor, over a year ago, in 2025, a year ending in 5, this body initiated its own review of its own mandated review of the charter, and did a considerable amount of work in that process. I'm wondering about, given the fact that this process, as it will play out, as you've outlined it, is not likely to conclude until the election of 28. How that squares with the mandatory 5-year review and charter update, it has really derailed what was a process underway to deal with what were quite a number of, how shall I say, anachronisms, outdated historical references, and straight out grammatical issues. What becomes of what that process was, and where that was already going? These are issues, very much the specifics, the language, the very detailed language of the charter that we were dealing with and we're familiar with, that are not likely to be under the purview of an elected commission. They're simply not likely to deal with them. Can you tell me what is the basis for derailing what was the process initiated by the Assembly? What is the basis for that? Simply by the filing of this petition.
Madam Speaker, through you. So I can't speak to the basis or the reason for the filing of the petition, but what I can say is that an elected charter commission has jurisdiction over the entire charter. So any of the work that was previously done, and I do remember this being discussed at a meeting, is certainly available if a charter commission is elected, and they could pick up where the periodic charter review left off. And the other thing, and this does not win me any friends, so I'm going to say it anyway, but a lot of the shalls with respect to periodic charter review are much more like a may, in that there's no way to enforce it, and there's no penalty for not doing it or not completing it. And so those types of reviews, yes, it is mandated by the charter. The charter says what it says. However, the charter was also drafted and refers to Chapter 801, and Chapter 801 leaves open to anyone, whether it's the Assembly, not anyone, the Assembly, the commissioners, or a petition from 5% of the residents to file this petition for charter, for a charter commission. And that, as it's drafted, stops the process. Now, it stops the process from moving forward officially. Does it mean that a charter review committee couldn't start talking about these things or continue to have talked about those things? No, it doesn't mean they can't. They could. Whether that's, again, I'm going to come back to whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, is not my purview, but the provisions of the charter anticipate that if a petition is filed as described, then no other action is going to be taken formally to change the form of county government. It doesn't prohibit an informal continued review. It doesn't prohibit members of the public from saying we'd like to see X, Y, or Z change. What it says is no other resolution or petition and no other proceedings may be filed unless the voters decide the first question in the negative. So hypothetically, there's materials or changes that want to be made. Those changes could be examined, they could be discussed, but nothing could be filed to change the form of government until the voters say no to, unless the voters say no to the election of a charter commission.
And do I understand you correctly to understand that change by change in the form of government, you mean any change in the charter?
Correct. Yes. It says no other proceedings, and I'm reading section 3C. It says in part, no other resolution or petition and no other proceedings for the adoption of any charter or form of government available to the county may be filed unless the voters decide the question in the negative. So a proceeding for the adoption of any other charter, changes to the charter or form of government to the county. And again, our legal kind of obligation with the rules of statutory construction, which are court determined rules through decisions on various cases, is that you have to try to read these two things together. And so it wouldn't make sense for a charter amendment to be going forward at the same time as whether to elect a charter commission. One of the concerns I think with that is that even if it made sense to the assembly, it made sense to the county commissioners, how do you explain to the voters, if you vote yes on this, then these changes are going to be made, but if you vote no on this, then these changes won't be. It just, to me, and my my analysis of both the chapter 801 and the charter together, is that the idea is there's a pause while the voters decide, do we want an elected charter commission, which, as I said, has jurisdiction over any and all changes that might be made, whether to the form of government or just to the words of the existing charter, are put on hold until the voters say yes or no. And if the voters say yes, then then the charter commission is going to be doing the work that you're describing.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Thank you.
Delegate Frederickson.
How are you? Thank you for your presentation. You caught my ear when you mentioned taxing authority. Would this form of review, if so put in charge, would they be able to change taxing authority? Or does that only come from the legislature?
That comes from the legislature. But there's certainly, this is the kind of thing I would expect that a charter commission might look at if it's raised, whether by the charter commission of itself, by the assembly, by the county commissioners, and or during the public forum or public hearings that are required. Those are the types of things that one would expect to hear about.
Okay, my second question is more of an observation, I guess, and that we're going to have an election, whether or not we're going to have a charter review. At the very same time, we're going to elect 15 new members. That seems almost like, I don't know, this just doesn't seem right. People are going to be running for something they don't even know what it is.
Madam Speaker, through you. So that is the way that charter commissions are elected. It's a two-step process. It happens at the same election. You can kind of see that if the voters say yes, it's good to be able to move forward right then, rather than have to wait another full state election cycle, because this question will appear on the ballot. It can appear on the ballot only at a state election. And so it goes on the ballot. Do we want a charter commission? And then if so, who are the people we want to serve on the charter commission? And the people who are running for a charter commissioner, elected charter commissioner, have to understand that if the answer to the question of whether we want an elected charter commission is no, then they will not have been elected to a position. They may have received votes, but it will not result in their election.
Okay, Thank you.
First is down at this end of the table for, and here we're going to see if I got to get it right. McElvey.
Very close, Madam Chair. McKelvey. Thank you and good evening, and thank you for your time this evening, Counselor. Just a quick question, if I can. Let's say we have a charter commission, they come through, they make recommendations to the voters. At that point, when it goes to a ballot of some sort, would those questions be grouped together as one big question? All this is fail or pass, or would they be listed as individual recommendations to be voted on? Thank you.
Thank you through you, Madam Speaker. In my opinion, it could be either. There's nothing that says it has to be a single question. Remember, if this isn't one of the optional forms of county government, which I really don't think it can be, because there isn't county government in general now, these optional forms, it is likely that what the Charter Commission is recommending is the request for a special act of the legislature. And then the legislature, would either approve or disapprove of that portion of the request. And why does that matter? Well, ultimately, what the special act that's requested could be one special act. It could be, several ballot questions in the same special act. This is the kind of thing that, you do see with charter adoption and amendment in cities and towns. An elected charter commission will come along and they'll say, we want to, do X, Y, Z. Yes, or we're going to put this question on the ballot. But then there might be another one that they want to put on the ballot that says, do you want to change this particular board from elected to appointed or something like that? So in my opinion, and again, not having really considered that question ahead of time, but I would expect that there would be the ability to ask more than one question, depending on the recommendations of the commission.
Can I follow up, please? Would there be, oh my goodness, it totally slipped my mind. It went in and went out. I'll get back to you.
I do have our friend from Eastham, Delegate Gallagher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Attorney Goldberg. Let's get down to some technical details about the structure of this commission. Reference was made to elected members members of the assembly would be allowed to speak if recognized by the chair. I'm curious, I don't see something here about how it's determined who will chair this commission. I assume it would be by vote of the members. Okay, yes, answer that first.
Certainly, Madam Speaker, through you. It says the commission member who received the highest number of votes shall convene the first meeting of the Charter Commission as soon as possible and no later than 15 days after the certification of the results of the state election by the Governor's Council. If the member doesn't act, the state secretary can designate another member of the commission to convene the first meeting. And at that first meeting, the commission will elect a chair, a vice chair, a treasurer, and a clerk.
Okay, and then one other follow-up. I had a question about the weighting of the votes of the elected members. There's a formula here. It says based on the weighted average, based on the population, but that the weighted average of 15 elected members would be 1/15. And they would be apportioned based on population. But then you also have 4 non-elected members, and I can't make it add up. Can you help me?
Madam Speaker, through you, I would like to help you. I'd have to look at that a little more closely. I read the words. I didn't quite do the math, and so we'd have to figure that out. And I'm sure there's some precedent for that already, and that's something we could take a closer look at for sure.
Thank you very much.
One more question, because I know that we'd like to let Attorney Goldberg leave when she needs to, and we're appreciative of the fact that she came today. And when when Mark Forrest is also available so that we get kind of the whole picture in one seating. And I think that's great. So that goes over to you. Here, I got it. McKelvey?
Kelvin.
It's a Delegate McKelvey again. Thank you.
That's it.
Anyway, I thought my follow-up question was this. Who sets the ballot? Who sets the ballot to determine what questions are what and if it's grouped or not grouped? I guess that's my question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So what the provisions of 801 provide is that the Charter Commission can petition the general court for the enactment of a special charter, the text of which shall be appended to the commission's report. So essentially, that request for a special act would identify the things that are being requested or the provisions that are being requested to be approved. And the way that works in my experience from a practical perspective is that the general court retains some authority to weigh in and recommend changes based on the way that a particular city or town has voted to authorize the petition. Here, the commission is petitioning the general court for the enactment of a special charter. I don't think, at least in my opinion at this point, that would mandate that it be presented in a particular way. But if you wanted to look section 13 of chapter 801 says, if it's one of the forms of government, it'll be done in a specific way. And the question appears in section A. It says, if the commission shall have proposed a special charter, it shall be the duty of the commission to petition the legislature forthwith for a special law or laws, and in the manner provided by the general enabling legislation to carry out the recommendations of the Charter Commission. And then it says, upon enactment of the enabling legislation, the charter will be presented to the voters in the manner provided in Part A. Shall the designating caption of section blank of the county charter be adopted? So it wouldn't say exactly that. Shall the special act, it'd be the number, chapter, whatever of the acts of whatever, be adopted for Barnstable County with the provision for a board of commissioners of X members elected for concurrent or non-concurrent, as the case may be, terms, and elected at large or from districts. My expectation, because that language may or may not work depending on what the commission is looking to do, is that there would be some flexibility there. And actually, if you look at section 14 as well, it says it has to conform with subsection C and have a statement of the following. So there is some guidance there. And I think, there would be some discussion. Again, for this purpose, I would say it would be important to speak not only with the Secretary of the Commonwealth's Elections Division, but again, with House and Senate Counsel. There's nothing that mandates that the legislature approve requests for a petitioned charter amendment from a charter commission, an elected charter commission. So discussion, it'd be useful to have discussion ahead of time so that what's presented is something that there can be relative confidence that there would be support for at the legislative level, at least to allow the question to go to the voters.
For the detailed kind of analysis of what this basically means for everyone who's involved with it, and the sightings that you also provided so that we could kind of go back to them and kind of look them up and see. And there may be another time as we move forward that we would like to have you come back and once we get into the process and see if we're kind of working it the right way. So if there's nothing else that's super, okay, terrific. Thank you again. And we're gonna let Chairman Mark Forrest of the Board of Regional Commissioners come up and talk to how the commissioners got to the point of deciding to ask for an elected committee to look at the charter. Yes.
Speaker, if I could ask just one quick question of our Attorney Goldberg before she leaves.
Okay.
just on that last reference, if this has to go to the legislature, I think you were saying, could possibly just not pass it, and that's where it dies. So that's another possible death to the results of this charter commission. Is that correct?
Madam Speaker, through you, a couple things. First, let me just refer you again to the provisions of section 14 of 801, because it does talk about if there are alternatives presented or if there's certain proposals that are submitted that aren't alternatives, the one with the highest number of votes would invalidate any conflicting other amendments. So there would be a discussion about how best to present all this. In terms of what the legislature can and cannot do, in my experience, the legislature, it's a creature of every single city and town, and who every single city and town has chosen to represent it. I am certain that the Barnstable County's representatives would be working with the cities and towns and the commission to make sure that what is requested goes forward. But of course, no one can force the legislature to do anything. We know that they have discretion. Nevertheless, my expectation would be that the commission would work closely with the commissioners and the assembly and the county's legislative delegation to make sure things move forward in an appropriate way.
We really appreciate all the time you put into this, and we'll be seeing you again, I'm quite sure.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm sorry I do have to run, but I appreciate being able to speak with you all tonight. And if there are additional questions, Madam Speaker, I'm happy to come back to answer anything in writing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Bye-bye.
so now.
Thank you.
Now we get to have our chairman talk to us about how this came about, why now? Why was it this year and not, because I've been on the assembly for 6 years, and I've heard it about, we've talked about having a charter commission formed, but it's never happened. So there have been, I understand, a number of reports that have been initiated by the assembly people who did put together things that was part of the 5-year review that never really got into any kind of format of play in the redrafting. So if you could share with us how we're here.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to commend Lauren Goldberg for her presentation. This is one of her many areas of expertise. I worked with her when I was the interim town administrator in the town of Brewster. She was the one that helped orchestrate and put together the Brewster Charter for the town of Brewster. And she's very, very knowledgeable, and she's a tremendous asset here for us here in Barnstable County. I think your initial comments sort of lead up to how we got here. The reality is that over the years, there have been numerous reports, numerous recommendations, including, I think, some very valuable hearings and testimony from your last charter review panel. And from my perspective, I think all of this information, both from the work of the committees established by the assembly, but also some of the other civic groups that have formed over the years. And quite frankly, there's a lot of consistency in the recommendations that we've seen over the years. Now, and I think that's where we see an elected charter commission playing a very important role. As Attorney Goldberg said, there are certain things that you can do when you do a 5-year review, but then there are the opportunities to do some fairly significant work. Now, what I'd like to do is just start a little bit back at the original Charter Commission in 1988. Believe it or not, I'm pretty old, and I was around back during those days when the Charter Commission was meeting, but I was also more actively involved with the Cape Cod Commission. And at the time in the 80s, the group involved in creating the Cape Cod Commission worked with the Charter Commission, working on our new charter. And the goal of the Charter Commission in '88 was to save county government. We were on the verge of losing county government back in the '80s. And the whole purpose was to create a charter, do our best job at it, and then find a way to weave in this whole new entity that we were creating called the Cape Cod Commission, and figure out a way to have a structure that basically sort of incorporated the Cape Cod Commission into county government. Because what we had before the Cape Cod Commission was a regional planning agency. And I served on the board of that regional planning agency for many, many years, representing the town of Provincetown. I worked in the town manager's office back in the early '80s, and so I served on a multitude of county boards and bodies back then. But the challenge in '88, I think we met. We saved county government, and we created a very unique and powerful structure. But there were some things that were left undone, not undone, but unresolved. And one of the biggest questions the charter commissioners had raised was the challenge in terms of financing county government. And they sort of left open in their recommendations really a pitch, a set of recommendations, almost a plea for the delegation to work with the county in finding ways to financially address the long-term needs of the county. There were recommendations about maybe being eligible for local aid that municipalities are eligible for. Eligibility in the use, the ability to access other dollars for municipalities. And it's safe to say that none of those recommendations really came to pass. And then in subsequent years, we've had numerous committees. The one group that met in 2011, I don't know, I think some of you maybe remember Senator Rauschenbach and Senator O'Leary. Now, they were chartered by the commissioners to put together a task force to look at county government. And I served on that task force. It was a fairly large group, and it came back with a series of recommendations. And then in 2015, the Assembly actually took up a fairly robust discussion about making some changes based on those recommendations. And those changes were substantive. Those were ultimately changes that would have had to have gone back to the legislature. For those who may not be familiar with them, one of the proposals that emerged before the Assembly in 2015 was a recommendation, I believe, from Delegate Princey, who was the recent speaker. And he was proposing that one way to address the issues that Senator Rauschenbach and O'Leary's commission, their task force, excuse me, one of the ways to address the problems that they addressed would be to deal with the problem of the weighted vote, and perhaps each representative being equal and each representative representing a certain element of the Cape's population. So Delegate Princey at the time proposed a five-member board that abolished both the county commissioners and the Assembly of Delegates, a five-member legislative body similar to what you see in local governments, and then an executive that would be very strong, a strong executive. And that was a recommendation, and that proposal did not pass. But so the point I'm getting at is that I can go over many, many years, a series of reviews, a series of recommendations that are very good faith attempts to try to find a way to get county government structurally either realigned or adjusted in some way to help county government work better. And so I think I've believed for quite some time that an elected charter commission, essentially, this is the purpose of an elected charter commission, to take those big questions that were unresolved and find a way to bring consensus and a path forward. So in the simplest way, that was the thinking of the commissioners. I will admit I've been the one sort of carrying the torch on this. When I ran as county commissioner in 2020, I felt it was important that we resolve take all the reports on the table, on the shelves that involve reforming county government, get them all together and have a fresh look at them all, and do it in a way so that at the end of the process, we are not hamstrung in any way and prevented from doing anything, but we have a sufficiently empowered commission that can take those recommendations and move forward with them. So that's sort of in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer questions and go into more detail, but that's essentially the motivation behind this.
All right. Talk.
Clearly, Commissioner, you put your finger on financing of county government as the overarching issue that has dogged us from the beginning. What possible scenario do you envision where an elected charter commission is going to be able to address that in any substantive way? Since anything they recommend is going to come through the legislature, as you know, and we know the prospects there. I don't see how that big question can really be dealt with.
May I? I think we have to deal with a number of big questions, and I don't think we can be intimidated by them, and we can't be shy or bashful in them. I think as a region, we have to be cognizant of, as you folks have been working on, you've been dealing with an affordable housing challenge. We should look at ways in which we can play a more constructive role in dealing with that. You've tackled that. You've made good faith attempts to look at this issue. What about the issue of climate change? All right, this is on us as well. There are things that we need to be thinking to the future on. All right, and taxation clearly in the revenue source. I know that's a hot topic and a hot button issue, but it's worth having us take a look at it. Now, it may very well be that the overall structure and set of recommendations may identify some measures that do require legislative engagement. So be it. But I don't think as a charter commission, it should be intimidated in any way by dealing with the future and making sure that county government is well empowered, well positioned, and well structured with sufficient resources to go forward and meet the challenges that our region faces. I know there's a tendency in some places to think small ball and to shortchange ourselves. But like I said before, in 1988, the Charter Commission back then was pressed for time. Its goal was to come up with a charter that could save county government so that the county revenues would no longer be would not be taken over by the Commonwealth. So it was a fight for us to hang on to the money that we were raising. And so we succeeded in that. But the reason why the 5-year review was put in the charter for a reason. And that's because back then when we created the charter, we knew that there were imperfections. There were things that we needed to periodically revisit so that we can strengthen county government. And so that's basically the mission and the charge for this new group will be to help us look at the future and find ways to build on the recommendations and try to address some of the proposals that were put before the county in the past that we did not deal with, that we failed to adopt.
Follow up to that. How do you envision that an elected body with no experience in running this regional government will have more success at doing a charter review that makes us more efficient, more effective than the commissioners and the assembly working together, who have experience, who understand the county government, what functions we perform, understand the breadth, understand the challenges? It's not clear to me how an elected body of people with no experience in county government are likely to come up with an outline, a model that's more effective than what we could do working together.
Madam Speaker. May I respond?
That's for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's for me. I'm not quick to sort of dismiss the capabilities of this group. Remember now, the 1988 Charter Commission, I heard the same arguments. What could they do? But they came up with the charter that we came up with. I thought they did a pretty good job and they got very good advice and they received testimony from a lot of people that cared deeply about county government. So they got tremendous input and tremendous guidance in terms of how they went forward. I would expect the same thing to happen here. You've got people that have served on this body and in county government for a long time. There are many people here that have a history in working to help make county government serve and do well here on Cape Cod. I think there's a tremendous body of information that can be useful and tapped into to make this effort at least have a chance of succeeding.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Charter review was underway
Oh.
last year. We had a committee. It was doing work. It had participation of both assembly members and commissioners. And by a vote of 3 commissioners, you derailed that process. The fact that you bring up today Patrick Princhy's proposal for a 5-member board implies to me that you are advocating for that proposal. So why did you derail the process that was underway? And are you in fact advocating for a 5-member board?
First of all, I referenced the 5-member board, Madam Speaker. I referenced the 5-member board as an example. There are a multitude of examples. I remember when Suzanne McAuliffe was the speaker on this board, she was a huge fan of having an elected executive running Cape Wide and an advisory board. There are a variety of proposals that are significant. Do I endorse or embrace any one of them? No, not at all. In fact, I see problems with that proposal, but the point is it was one delegate's good faith attempt to try to solve a problem that this task force identified, and he came up with a proposal. I give him a credit at least for trying, but no, I don't support necessarily that proposal, and that's not what this is about. Now, with respect to derailing, we didn't derail anything. The reality is that we basically had made it very clear that we had intentions to move forward, but we were very interested in what this group had done. I had communicated with the previous speaker. She had pretty much said that the group had disbanded and indicated to us that she was fine with us going forward. So from my point of view, the notion that we somehow derailed something is I don't accept that at all.
I beg to differ. That is simply contrary to fact. That board had not run its course. It disbanded after you took your vote, and it disbanded because you took your vote.
Sorry about that. I meant to go to you then, but let's go to Mr. Gessen.
Hi, Madam Speaker. I just have a couple of questions here. Going off of what Delegate Gallagher raised, Commissioner Forrest, I am a little bit at a loss as to why we're embarking on this Charter Commission review. You listed a number of what seemed to be pretty admirable pursuits that we could pursue if we were reviewing the charter, including making us eligible for local funding. But that's something that we might be able to do through a home rule petition process, which would require 51% of the assembly and directly to the legislature. Or you raised, looking at the expenditure process at the county, which could also have been done through the collaborative process that Delegate Gallagher talked about. Really, an elected charter commission, if you look at Chapter 801 of 1985, it's really there to change the structure of the elected members of the county. I mean, that's what Chapter 801 really covers. And this, and I just don't understand, what it is that the commissioner saw that was wrong with the current structure of county government. And I'd love your input on it. In the resolution that the commissioners voted on in order to support this elected charter commission, they pointed to the current county government creating, and I quote, creating unsustainable and structurally imbalanced county budgets. Additionally, that resolution says that the current county government since 1988 has made very little progress in providing regional services. I guess my question to you, Commissioner Forrest, is in this resolution that the commissioners unanimously support in order to create this commission, what's stopping the commissioners who introduce the budget every year from introducing a budget that's not unsustainable and structurally imbalanced? Or what's currently stopping the commissioners from pursuing new regional services and ideas? Folks ask me, oh, should we get rid of the assembly or should we get rid of the commissioners? My answer is always, it's about the people in the roles, not about the roles. And I do think, this approach of let's rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic by creating a charter commission in order to solve these issues we agree exist is a little misguided. So I would like to hear your thoughts, Commissioner Forrest, on why the current structure has failed us? Where in this process have we seen good ideas or structurally balanced budgets get shot down because we have an assembly of delegates and a board of commissioners? Why do we need to reshape it?
First of all, let's talk a little bit about the finances of the county. We've done some fairly robust projections in terms of looking at our expenditures and our revenues, and clearly we're facing some major challenges. I think you've been briefed by our finance director. She's gone into a fairly significant detail of the chances that the challenges that we're facing long term. I'm not going to repeat them all in detail here, but they're significant. And that was one of the, like I said, when we first created county government, or at least created the charter to keep county government, this was clearly on the radar screen of the delegates, the charter commissioners back then. So clearly it's been an ongoing issue. And the reality is that we need to be looking long term. And if we need to go over and have another briefing going over our finances, I'm happy to set that up. So when we also talk about regional services, when this document was created, we were thinking that long term we could regionalize. And let me pull out the charter report itself. We had thought that we could regionalize wastewater services countywide. We thought we could regionalize public works services, water departments, water service. There was a whole array of services that we envisioned the county to regionalize. And the reality is that there are many services that we identified in the Charter Commission report that we just haven't followed up on. We haven't acted upon. It's worth reviewing those great ambitions that we had in place at the time. And maybe as some of the members of the community that testified for the Assembly's Charter Review Committee, suggesting about either moderating our ambitions or realigning them in some way, we need to make some adjustments and accommodations. So from my point of view, the record's been pretty well established that when we started off on this adventure, we were envisioning that we would be doing a lot more than we're doing right now. So I think it's important.
Go ahead.
No, Commissioner Force, I absolutely agree. These are all admirable goals. I guess what I don't get is what in our current structure is stopping the commissioners from introducing these ideas? Why do we need to shake up, the Rubik's Cube and rearrange, how many seats we have at this table and how many seats we have down the hill in order to start providing regional services? I hope you understand my question. Like, I do remember that presentation from the finance director. What's stopping us from starting to tackle those proposals now? Like, why do we need to wait another 2 years until we elect another, as Delegate Frederickson say, another bureaucracy to look at this all before we actually start addressing these issues? I think we've got the tools in front of us. Let's start looking at some solutions. What's structurally stopping us now?
As I mentioned before, the financial limitations and the challenges facing the county are the basic barriers that we have to work within. And so that's the point. That's the point I'm getting at. Is there something preventing us? Yeah, we're challenged right now to pay the bills and fund the current operations of the county. So if we're going to be proposing regionalizing a major set of services, we would be doing more or less more of the same kind of initiatives that we're doing now. For example, regional housing services. We've come up with a very innovative way to get that initiative off the ground. It's not like we're not doing anything. We're doing the best we can within the limitations that we have.
Okay, we go back to Deputy Speaker Freisel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So first of all, thank you for coming and making a presentation to us today of your views on this. Very interesting perspective on it, and you have a great deal of history. I agree with you in part and disagree with you in part. The part where I agree with you is, in fact, we had a discussion at this assembly before the resolution was taken by the commissioners to set up the elected commission where we talked without vote. It was simply a discussion about whether or not the commission that was already underway should think more than just about language changes here and there, and whether it should think about some alternative forms for county government that might be an improvement over our current form. I spoke in favor of that idea because I still believe it's worth thinking about. And there were others who supported it, and some others, the initial reaction was, we're good as we are, no need to change. But that wasn't a vote. It wasn't a final conclusion by this body about that. In fact, we had a major objection was, well, what are we going to look at? Let's give the commission some time to think about this. The commission took testimony from some of the very same people you're going to go back and talk to when this elected commission gets underway. And what disappointed me, where I disagree with you, is that we didn't give that commission enough time to think through these issues. We rushed, in my view, and I don't know if there was some conversations that sort of supported the view that the commissioners should submit an immediately elected commission. But why I didn't think that was the right route at that time, and why I still don't think it's the right route, it's long. So all the problems that are recognized in your whereas clauses of your resolution, you're giving another at least 2 or more years before we tackle them. If things are so bad, don't wait, right? It takes time. It's uncertain. You may get a no vote. You may get a no vote in November, no commission, or you could actually, hypothetically, I know, you could end up with a commission with the very same people that are in this room. So where have we got at that point? So why go through this process? Because everybody in this room can serve on that commission. Everybody in this room, even if they don't serve on that commission as a voting member, can attend every single meeting, deliberate on every single matter. What have we accomplished? We spent more money. We've taken more time when we could have at least sat down and said, let's try to work this out. And we're going to go over those consistent proposals and recommendations you just mentioned. They're going to come right back at us. And that commission is going to look at those very things again. So for me, it was, come on, let's not take even more time again to look at the same things again. There's only so many ways you can structure a government. It's not like, this is something we have an infinite range of possibilities. So we could have tried at least, and we did not. In my book, there was no good faith effort to try to sit down, work this out, put something together that could go to the legislature. And who was in fact the major proponent of that at the commission? Patrick. He was the one. He really wanted to go that route. Princey, the former speaker, he from the very beginning said, let's sit down, let's work out something. Let's put something before the legislature that both the commissioners and the assembly agree on. Let's get this done now. Let's not wait for an elected commission. So I don't know what we're going to get in an elected commission that's any greater knowledge, expertise, and information that this body with the commissioners could not do with that commission. So that's where I disagree with you, Mr. Forrest. I agree we should think about some other ideas for the structure and not say, oh, because we are where we are, we must stay where we are. I don't agree with that thinking either. But I disagree with the rush to the elected commission. And I hope it may produce some of these big things, but some of the things you're talking about, like the DPW on a regional basis and so on, you know as well as I do what there is that's going to go. I mean, we've got boards of selectmen. We select boards. We're not going to get, we know why those things don't happen at the regional level. It's not because we don't try at the regional level. We have 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, every single one of them jealous of their power. And I served on one of those select boards in the town of Winchester. I know of the psychology, all right? And I know what the regionalization could mean in terms of efficiency, the way, frankly, county government's powerful everywhere in the country except Massachusetts. There's a reason for that. It's historical, it's political, and I don't care how many commissions you form, I don't care how many recommendations you make, you are not going to get past that history and that power within the 351 cities and towns. We do our best, but we know where that obstacle is. So I disagree with the rush to it. This is where we are. We can talk about it all day. It won't change anything. We're on this train now. And so we'll have to see where it leads us. Thank you.
Commissioner Forrest, would you there? Delegate Harder?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So you talk about these limitations we've got coming up, the finances. We all know that. We've been working on that. In fact, we started worrying about finances when we cut your budget by $800,000 4 years ago, whenever it was, that seemed to start this animosity towards the assembly. That's what our purpose is to work together to figure out. Carol comes, Finance Director Capola comes to us, presents the same financial information that you get so that we can all work together on this, not kick it to not postpone it for 4 years so that people who don't have a dog in the fight can opine on what they think. And I find it especially disingenuous because I personally worked on a recall petition for 4 years. And we wrote it. It went through 2, maybe even 3, Jim would know, different terms of the assembly. And when we submitted it to the commissioners, as one of the commissioners said, you rejected it because you didn't trust the voters to understand it. And you were afraid the voters could just be bought by a lot of money spent on the PR. So I don't understand why you didn't even trust the voters on a recall petition, but now you want to waste 2 to 4 years before we work on something just because you don't want to work together. And I don't understand it.
Well, Madam Speaker.
Yes, please.
We're always very interested in working together on areas of mutual interest. But the reality is when we look at the work that's been done to evaluate the county and to make recommendations for improving the county, all of those recommendations have gone nowhere. We as a board have decided that we believe it makes sense to go in this direction in order to review the county and take up many of the recommendations that members of this body and previous bodies have presented. There's a lot of good work with some very valuable recommendations. And there's no reason why they should continue to sit on the shelf. So from our point of view, we're interested in just taking this forward and bringing it to some resolution. And the reality is that I think there are very good people in the community that can play a very, very constructive role in this exercise.
Delegate O'Malley. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. May I jump first to Delegate Killian? He's been patiently waiting and I just overlooked him.
Well, not so patiently. So I would recommend, and I appreciate Commissioner Forrest's presentation today, but I think he is not saying the quiet part out loud. And if you want to hear that, I suggest you go back and re-listen to when we had the recovering politicians, O'Leary and Rauschenbach here last year. And they were very honest about what they foresaw the county government to be. And that is replacing this body with full-time politicians who can then go to Beacon Hill and lobby for money and create new revenue streams and do taxation. Essentially, much more robust government. And I've been around a few years and I've found no constituents who've said, county government's great, but it's just not big enough and we need it bigger. So, and in fact, Mr. O'Leary actually made the comment, and I had to play it a couple times, that these new positions would create opportunity for aspiring young politicians. So they would like to see these positions turned into some type of a job fair for lifelong politicians, which is unfortunate. And I appreciate what the commissioners are doing, but I think we can all agree that this elected commission is hopefully on their end, a group of people that they can convince will do the things that they want them to do. And as the Delegate Freisel pointed out, it could end up with many of us being back on that commission, which makes sense. I can't think of too many folks in the electorate who could come in and really evaluate county government and determine what the future needs would be. So it's been an interesting conversation, and I remember when his colleague, Commissioner Bergstrom, when he was on this body, traveled around Cape Cod, had multiple meetings about restructure of county government, and there was no appetite for it from one end to the other. No, one board of selectmen thought it would be an improvement to the county, and it just has gone on for several years. The commissioner mentions consistency of attitude, but it's really just more of an echo chamber. It's the same people year in and year out who want to make these changes to make county government more like other regional governments around the country. The only problem is around the country, they don't have local government. So it makes a lot of sense. We have 4 layers of government over us here, and I think what we have is enough. Although I agree regionalization, it makes a lot of sense in some instances, but it means a reduction in local government. And as you pointed out, that is like next to never going to happen. So I think we have to acknowledge that and acknowledge the practical measures that we can control. I think this body functions very well. When I joined county government, I want to make sure it ran efficiently and effectively, but I also didn't want to see it get any bigger than it was, because unless there was a compelling reason to do so. As I said, I believe that we could do some regionalization, save some money. But again, the opportunities have been few and far between. Thank you very much.
Okay, yes, Delegate O'Malley.
So Commissioner, you've just alluded to the wealth of good ideas that have come forth from various proponents over the years. I would have to say to you, then, why haven't those been brought forth through the commission to the assembly for passage? If there are such good ideas about how we can make things work better, why haven't those been brought to us? It leads only to one conclusion, that, as Delegate Killian has pointed out, there's a foregone goal here, and that is to restructure county government, to eliminate the assembly. That's your goal. That's the hope. It's been articulated again and again by some of the voices who command attention on the Cape. We're not talking about making changes in how we operate here between the commissioners and the assembly, because those are within your purview to have brought to us. And if they haven't been, then I would have to say why. I feel like there's a hidden agenda here, and I think you know it.
Madam Speaker, there is no hidden agenda here. The Assembly controls the current review process of the charter. I would ask you, where have you been? Where have you been? Where are your recommendations? Why haven't I? No, let me listen. Let me finish.
We had a process underway.
You did, and you failed to complete it. Where is it?
You sidetracked it.
I did not sidetrack it. No, I didn't.
You filed that
I completely
ordinance.
disagree. We were informed by the speaker that you folks had concluded and disbanded. That's the message that we got.
That's
you
not
could have
true.
You could have come to a commissioners meeting. You could have come to a commissioners meeting and explained to us what you were up to, what you were doing, where you were going. We didn't hear from you in spite of numerous invitations. So the reality is let's just stop it right here before it gets really ugly. The reality is we've initiated a process in good faith. There is work that you have done, that prior delegates have done, but prior boards have done, as well as civic groups, that's worth a fresh look. And rather than let this drag on, let's bring this to a conclusion. Let's bring it to a conclusion. Let's bring it to an end. All right, we should not let this drag on. The first set of recommendations that I would encourage you to reread are the recommendations from the Business Roundtable, from the APCC and a host of other groups recommending structural changes to county government back in 2011. We've been talking about this for years. It's time to bring this conversation to an end. And I'm with Delegate Frizzell that we need to bring this to a closure. Now, I did not operate with the intention of derailing what you were doing. No intention whatsoever. I was hoping that we could build on your recommendations, but for whatever reason, and again, obviously there's another story here that I'm not fully up to speed on, but for some reason your process was derailed or ended in some way, and then we were left to grab the ball and run with it. And that's what we've done. That's what we've done.
Yes, go ahead, Delegate Gessen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'll be brief, but I do think it's important that we understand how this process came about. So I just want to clarify, Commissioner Forrest, you're saying that no one told the Board of Commissioners that we had an ongoing charter process and nobody provided updates. Is that correct?
We did not get updates at all from the group, but I'm not. I don't want to be
Commissioner Forrest.
argumentative about this. No,
No,
the
no,
point I'm getting at
Commissioner
is that
I understand, but delegates do feel like the process got cut off, and I think it's important to clarify.
we did not do
chair,
that.
The chair of the Board of Commissioners, Commissioner Lyons, was the vice chair of this Charter Review Committee. Am I mistaken?
I don't see the relevance to the point. Yes, she was on the group.
She was a member.
Yes.
I don't believe she was the vice chair, but she was a member.
Oh,
Yeah.
apologies.
I understand.
And yet you received no update at the Board of Commissioners with one of your three members being on this Charter Review Committee.
Our door is always open to the Assembly to come in and provide a presentation on what its business is and what it's doing. Like I said to you before, we were told that your process had come to an end. I would love to have seen the report. I would have loved to have seen the recommendations. I've followed all the meetings and I thought you had some very interesting deliberations. And I reject the commentary from the delegate from Sandwich. This is no hidden agenda. I have no interest in creating a new bureaucracy whatsoever. I mean, that's just a red herring. There's nothing to that. The reality is that there's been an enormous amount of work done by a lot of people to try to fix county government. And I think it's time we bring that to a conclusion.
Delegate Harder?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Besides the fact that Delegate Commissioner Lyons was on the committee, so one would think that being your liaison, she would be the one to report to you. You're the executive branch. We're legislative. You come to us. We don't go to you. Second of all, you say you want to put this to an end. Your exact quote was, "We shouldn't let this drag on." Well, by doing the charter committee, you're dragging it on for at least 3 years. So that excuse goes out the window. And what I don't understand is I watch your meetings every week, right? I have never, ever heard you, the commissioners, discuss anything like, how could we regionalize wastewater? What could we do? At your meetings, you chat in broad terms, but you never come up with any proposals about what we could or couldn't do. Which means if you're having these discussions, you're breaking open meeting law because you don't discuss anything of substance at your meetings. And if you have suggestions of how we could regionalize wastewater or other important functions of the county, then they should be being discussed in public, not somewhere in quiet, in private, where nobody knows about it until you sit here and claim, oh, we're not getting anything done, so we have to wait 3 years for an elected commission to do it. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I have to respond to this comment. The reality is when I mentioned the topics of regionalizing these services, I'm trying to characterize the vision of the 1988 Charter Commission. That when you look at the Charter Commission report, it had this broad vision in terms of all the things that it wanted to accomplish. Now, what you heard during some of your testimony that you held during your last year's review were recommendations from people who suggested that maybe we need to downsize. Maybe we need to be more modest in our ambitions. Maybe we need to be more focused as a group in certain areas. Maybe the environment should be an area that we particularly focus in on. That's the point I'm getting at, is that we need to be not backward looking, but we need to be forward looking. I think some of those recommendations that came from your committee deliberations were very helpful and very useful. And I would like to see us sort of in the spirit of going forward and looking at the future, do that. Now, let me just mention another thing. It's not unusual for a government body to go through a process of refining, rehoning its structure and its operations. I go back to the days in the 90s here on Cape Cod where we converted from full-time select boards to part-time select boards. Did we change radically local government? No, but we did. We did refine the structure so that we had selectmen were no longer full-time administrators. We made selectmen part-time administrators, and we hired full-time administrators. So we have now a whole legion of town administrators here on Cape Cod, where our towns are professionally managed in our communities. What I'm hoping for going forward is we can be much more forward-looking in understanding the limitations and the challenges that await us going forward, and making sure that the structure is more in line with meeting those challenges. There's no, in my view, there's no preordained conclusion about changing this group or changing that group. I do believe there's a need for a stronger executive. I will admit a bias there. I'm a former town administrator myself, so I always will see a benefit in having strong administrations. But how we organize legislatively, how we organize in a broader structure, I think that's up for more discussion. And like I said, you've had other boards that have come up with different recommendations, including recommendations within your own body. And there's been, again, we're at a point where there's been a lack of consensus and a lack of moving forward on any of this. So my goal is to hopefully we can build on a lot of the work that's been done and move forward on it.
So the only thing you're talking about is changing structure. But you sit here and justify a commission.
No,
please let me finish.
Sure.
You talk about needing the elected charter commission because we're not getting anything done. But the only
in
thing
terms
you're
of reform,
talking about,
in terms of reform, we're not collectively getting anything done.
but
That's true.
reform wouldn't be necessary unless we got rid of the commissioner so you could meet in public. The only reform we need is for the commissioners to discuss with the delegates.
When you keep
what
saying,
want
when you say get rid of the commissioners because we don't meet in public, what do you?
when do you talk about we need this commission?
We have open public meetings and we
Right.
deliberate in our business
Yes.
at our public meetings. There's
Right.
no secret
But
negotiations
never
going on.
discuss.
No, and I
Okay.
reject
Delegate
the
Harder.
characterization that somehow we're engaged in something underhanded here. That's part of what's coming out of this meeting tonight, is that somehow there's something nefarious going on. There isn't. I'm coming here to give you a very straight and honest explanation as to what we're doing, and you're trying to misrepresent what we're doing and mischaracterize what we're doing as something nefarious with a secret agenda.
Trail.
No, that's not at all
So-
what I'm saying.
Elizabeth.
I'm saying if you want
Elizabeth.
us,
Enough.
please,
No.
you want us to
No.
discuss topics,
No.
they have to tell us.
Okay, Let him go first. Okay. Go ahead, Delegate Gallagher.
I would just like to note 2 dates for the record. The commissioners' vote to institute an elected commission was on August 27th.
Yeah.
The charter review committee that was underway ended its business on September 10th. It is not possible that the chair of that committee informed the commissioners that the committee had wound up its business.
No, it didn't.
I'm just telling you what I was told. Okay? You
Sorry,
can,
it's
you
not
can,
possible.
it is possible because I heard the conversation.
I know when the votes were taken.
Again, I don't know what, I'm telling you, I received the communication from the speaker indicating where things stood with your deliberations as a group. And based on that communication, we went forward. There you go.
I'm sorry, based on the facts, there's a conclusion to be drawn here, and that is that the commissioners derailed the charter review committee that was underway.
Again, I hate to be argumentative, but I completely disagree with that statement. No, I'm not. I'm not arguing your facts. With all
I'm
due
sorry, this
respect.
is a matter of public record. You're talking
Hey.
about a private conversation that's not a matter of public record.
Okay, let's go over to Frederickson from Barnstable.
Good evening. How's it going tonight? All right? Having a good time? Yes. First of all, I must say, I appreciate the fact that you came here. I appreciate the work you're doing around the county, selling what you do, what we all do. That's pretty good. I'm not sure of how many of us are really doing that, but as a regional, the entire region, that's more your job. We worry about our own town, so I appreciate that. I must disclose, I am a friend of Mark Forrest, have been for a long time. Maybe we don't agree on everything, but I appreciate your dedication to government politics through decades and decades, and it's hard to compare my 1 ounce of experience to yours. So I listen to you on what your thoughts are and processes, and try to see where they fit. So I understand what you're saying. I looked at those plans that were put on the shelf a few years back. I was suspect of our own charter review group that came in. I'm afraid that advocates of special interests can infiltrate that, and maybe they almost did. I wasn't pleased with the performance of our own leadership in assembly at that time. That meeting was that they took for granted on us was really, particularly concerning. That I don't know what we were really doing, and what they gathered from that to go right back to the charter review and take some other type of action was really interesting, which went right over to the commissioners, where you guys, your commissioners put together this petition. So I don't know, it is what it is. It's flowing. It's happening. There is no stopping. Our charter review is disbanded. It is up to the election in November. We will see how that goes. My sense is that that it's going to be a tough sell. There's a lot of county stuff, and I'm not sure we did ourselves a bunch of favors over the last several months with some of our discussions we've had, that many people are just fed up with county government. And maybe if there was a charter review commission elected, they might just, disband the whole thing. I don't know. That's very possible. But one thing that's apparent to me coming into this position is that our system of communicating with each other has not been strong, and I don't fully understand it. When you think about it, we got 2 petitions going up to the legislature that we didn't really get strong opinions or discussions amongst each other. That's a problem. That should be, this is big stuff. And we should have been like having better communication all along the way, not only with us, with the people in the public that are out there. to discuss it with our own other elected officials within our communities. I think we saw evidence of what that looks like. But anyway, I don't know what else I can add to this, but I don't want you to feel like you're Custer, okay? That you're appreciated in a lot of ways, even though we might not agree on everything. So thank you.
Thank you. I need to respond to the comments.
And
Thank
then
you.
after Chair Forrest does that, we're going to come over to, what?
Mm.
We're going to come over to Deputy Director Friesel, and unless there's something startlingly new to discuss on this issue at this time, we're going to move off it and try to get some of these other things out of the way. So thank you, everybody, for your contributions.
Yeah, my comment, first of all, I appreciate your comments, Frank, or the delegate from Barnstable. I've known you for a long time. I have a tremendous respect for your service to our community. You've done great work, and you're doing a great job as a delegate. You're right. We do have a communication problem. You just heard it right there, that if there's something going on, we have to figure it out. We have to come up here and figure out what it is we need to know. I want you to know, as long as I'm the chairman, our door is always open. If there's something going on that you think we need to know about that you're working on, by all means, come on by. I'd love to hear from you. And in fact, the times when the speaker has come, those have been very enjoyable and very productive discussions. And when your predecessor has come, those have been, I complain that we don't hear often enough from our assembly leadership. And the doors continues to be open and will always be open. But Delegate Frank Frederickson said something that's very, very important. And that is, there was a time when we used to do things and do things well when it came to public policy. Now, I was very involved in the creation of the Cape Cod Land Bank. I told you, I'm very old and I've been around maybe too long. But when we did the Cape Cod Land Bank, we had a lot of discussion. We did consensus building. We had county officials sitting down with municipal officials, and we worked it, and we worked it, and we worked it. And eventually, regional leaders came together and came up with a proposal. We took the proposal that we felt was a consensus, and we put it on a non-binding referendum, and we let the voters vote on the proposal. And based on that support for the Cape Cod Land Bank, which was significant, we decided to take that and work with our legislative delegation, again, county, regional leadership, work with our delegation to advance a piece of legislation that reflected what we wanted and what the people ratified. The non-binding referendum was overwhelming on the land bank, and eventually the legislature rallied behind it and did it. Now, they changed the financing mechanism, so we had a problem getting it voted on the first time, but we stayed with it, and eventually we were able to get a land bank proposal done. It has served as a model for the Community Preservation Act. So we've done big things here, and we've done them well. And it's typically when we communicate with one another, when we talk to one another, when we work with one another, when we reach out even to people that we may not necessarily agree with and engage in conversation. And we did that with the land bank. We did that with the Cape Cod Commission. Same process, same method, a lot of talking, a lot of discussion, a lot of engagement. At some point, we ended up getting that done as well. And it's the same thing with the county charter. So we've done this before. We've done big things before. And my hope is that we can continue to do them again. But at the heart of it is working together and communicating. And again, this body, and I believe this with every ounce of my breath, this body has come up with good ideas on how we can fix the county. I don't want to argue over what happened in the past or whether or not this one didn't report to this one at a certain time or whatever. It just, that doesn't get us anywhere. As you said, we've got a ballot question, we're going forward. To me, it's incumbent that we make sure that that process is a productive one, because it can mean a lot in terms of strengthening the county, becoming maybe more focused in what we do, and be more efficient in how we get there. That's all. And I don't think there's anything to shy away from there. That's a challenge that we all should embrace and work forward on, regardless of our differences of opinion on a particular structure or a particular solution. You can even use this process to make the arguments that you were making on the ballot in the last election. Question number 6. This group thought it had certain authority and certain power, and we had a disagreement. But you know what? Let's have that conversation in front of an elected charter commission. Let's have that conversation. Let's get those things clarified, get those things resolved. That's the only mechanism for which we can resolve things like that. All right. Now, when we changed the town governments from the select boards that were full-time administrators to the part-timers, what did we do? We went through in each town in a process of creating an elected charter commission, doing the very same thing. And we went through a process where we got testimony from people that understood the local government and how it worked. And then eventually each town came up with their own plan in terms of what to do going forward. So I think we can be successful in this, and I think we can finally get resolved a host of things that have just been languishing. So, but thank you for your comments. And Madam Speaker, thank you for inviting me to be here today.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So through all this, what was running through my mind was that famous quote from the movie Cool Hand Luke. What we have here is a failure to communicate. And how true and unfortunately, and how tragic. I'll say that from the beginning, what you just said about the way the land bank got formed, about the Cape Cod Commission, about people sitting down, working on big ideas together is exactly what I had in mind when we had the commission formed and we started to at least percolate some big ideas. And I think you know this, when you percolate big ideas, it doesn't get done right away, right? There's a lot of pushing and pulling in that process. We just started that process and then it ended. And how it ended, I'm not going to go back over that history. It's now irrelevant because we're moving on a train of the ballot question. But I think the fact that we got there that quickly without our working together in that fashion is the tragic opportunity. You know, tragic that we missed that opportunity. We had that opportunity. We could have done that, but we can't now. We're on the train of the ballot in the potential elected commission, but we could be back together again. Who knows? We may not have an elected commission, but let's end on this. Let's not let the process that's going to unveil itself through the elected commission stop us from working together now. If there are big ideas out there, if there are good ideas the commissioners have been thinking about that they think that, you know, they should bring to the assembly for us to consider, and vice versa, if the assembly has ideas, let's not stop doing things until 28 or 26 in the election. Let's do them now. Let's work together now. Let's communicate better now. Let's not wait until we hear something from a potential commission to tell us how we should communicate or how we should do things. We can do them now. So I'm hoping that what comes out of this meeting tonight is an improvement, not a failure to communicate, but an ability to communicate and get some work done for the benefit of the citizens of the county. That's who we all work for, the citizens of the county. So again, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. It helped me to better appreciate how the process broke down, in my opinion. And I'm sorry for that, but it is what it is, and we're going to move on from there. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair Forrest. But before we move on, can we have either you or Administrator give the Assembly an update on the Board of Commissioners meeting in Eastham on the 25th?
Before we begin, I want to embrace your comments, Deputy Speaker Frizzell. And our door is always open and we're willing. Now, generally, when we come before you, we usually invite our administrator here to come before you. And if there's a desire for us to come as individual members or as your chair, I'm happy to come at any time. I think that we are doing good things. We are doing great things in Barnstable County. All right, there's no question about it. And the reason why we're doing it is we've got a terrific staff, terrific department heads, and some wonderful programs. Now, what I'm trying to do as the chairman of the board is to take our board and the county sort of on the road. We have a road show. And our last stop was in Eastham last week, where we had a wonderful meeting with representatives of the town government. We had the retiring town administrator, Jackie Beebe, join us with the chairman of the board, and then there were a host of other volunteers and other committee members that joined in the meeting. And there were two areas that we really focused in on. One is the development of a climate action plan, climate change action plan in the town of Eastham. And we had the opportunity for the Cape Cod Commission staff to come in to tell us how they were working with Eastham residents in pulling it all together. And I have to say, they made a terrific presentation, and they outlined not only what some of the key ingredients of the plan are, and it's yet to be presented by the select board for deliberation and hopefully an adoption. But fundamentally, they laid out how they went about putting it together. And again, I've been around a long time. I'm used to seeing plans that are sort of top-down plans where you hire the county, they come in and they drop a plan on you. Right? You have a couple of meetings, people come in, they throw a couple of comments, and before you know it, the plan is done, and then we're on to the next one. What the Cape Cod Commission staff did is they spent a fairly significant amount of time going to where the people are and getting active engagement by citizens in the town of Eastham. And I was very impressed with their public engagement process, the public participation component to the climate change action plan. They did a remarkable job, and the people in the community that are very active stakeholders in this topic were there, quite frankly, to praise the county for its help in pulling it together and making it genuinely their own plan. It wasn't a top-down plan sort of developed on high from the county and then just dropped on the community after a few perfunctory meetings. No, it was definitely a plan that they embraced, that they consider theirs, and they had an active role in shaping and in developing. So from my point of view, that was an outstanding presentation and an outstanding discussion. And it was, quite frankly, it was exciting to hear all the positive comments from the residents involved in the community, the stakeholders, as well as the municipal officials. When I say we, I'm talking about the collective sense. The county was receiving fairly significant praise across the board. The next topic that we delved into was the drought. Some of you may know that in my years of work for two congressmen, I spent a lot of time and energy focused on groundwater issues, groundwater pollution remediation. In fact, I started that when I was in local government in Provincetown, as Dr. O'Malley knows. We have an abundance of water in terms of supply, but we're sufficiently challenged in a number of areas where access to supplies can be somewhat limited. So in Eastham, we spent some time focusing on what we call the Nauset lens. If I went down Barnstable Village and took a quiz and asked people, where's the Nauset lens, most folks wouldn't know what I was talking about. So one of the things that I've been discussing with my fellow commissioners and with others is what can we do as a county to better educate people on just how our groundwater system works? How does our sole source aquifer work? And one way to do this, and it's timely because of the importance of the drought. There are many people here that don't even know that we're in a drought. And so my hope is that we can engage in more of a dialogue with our towns, like in Eastham and in other towns that are wrestling with the complications of a drought, that are trying to convince their residents that there are water conservation measures that need to be taken and other steps that need to be taken to better conserve and better protect water resources. And some of this may actually involve taking steps to work with communities and maybe either acquiring lands or setting aside lands that are crucial for water supply purposes. So the topic of water supply, particularly on the Lower Cape, is a topic that we as commissioners feel very strongly about. So as we have our trips out on the Outer Cape, we'll be talking about the Chickasaw lens from time to time when we are in Wellfleet, or the Pamet lens when we're in Truro. These lenses are very fragile parts of our groundwater system that deserve significant protection. In Brewster and in Orleans and Harwich, the towns there have done, I think the water departments have done a very, very good job in collaborating on how they conserve water. They regularly meet, they monitor their water supply levels, they monitor consumption levels, and they have what I would say a fairly robust is the term, maybe I sometimes overuse, but nonetheless, they have a very robust water monitoring program, and they're very collaborative in terms of water conservation measures. And so there's work going on that I think that we can probably build on and replicate and help other towns build on as well. But on the Outer Cape, with the drought conditions being the way they are, I'm very concerned about what's going on and what's happening. Not to say that I'm not concerned about the drought conditions elsewhere on the Cape, but clearly in the Outer Cape, with that fragile portion of our aquifer being stressed, it's important that we pay close attention to what's going on out there. So we talked about the drought, the levels of the drought. I would recommend that you invite Christy and Tim Parsakarnis, the groundwater hydrologist, maybe at some point in the near future, to talk about the hydrology and the challenges of the drought, because it's going to continue to be an issue that we keep an eye on and discuss. What are some of the things that we can do collaboratively to improve our ability to conserve water and better manage our water resources down the road? So Tim and Christy gave an excellent presentation on water. And then we just talked generally between our board and the Eastham officials about some of the challenges they're facing in paying for services, maybe areas where we can regionally collaborate on services. And there's certain things that they need some help with. So there's more room for discussion. And then we got a chance to say goodbye to one of Cape Cod's finest town administrators, Jackie Beebe. She's leaving in June, and she's going to be missed. So did I miss anything?
Any other questions for? No? Okay, so thank you very, very much for that detailed information and for, kind of letting the air out and seeing where we all were. And I think there was a lot of good feedback, and so now I think that the assembly can convene. And maybe we'll get through this. Next is the calendar, our reports of officers and committees. First is the report from the Standing Committee on Telecommunications and Energy meeting of March 23rd. And I believe that that's Chair Killian who will bring us up to speed on that.
It is. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Telecommunications and Energy met remotely on Wednesday, March 23rd at 4 p.m. The committee reviewed the fiscal year 2027 Cape Cod Regional Government Budget for Information Technology. Information Technology Department Director Bill Travers and Regional Administrator Michael Dutton appeared before the committee to discuss the budget. The committee voted to favorably recommend approval of the budget to the Finance Committee as proposed. The committee found that the budget to be structurally balanced as revenue continues to outpace expense growth despite higher workload from regional cyber incidents.
Is from the Standing Committee on Health and Human Services, meeting also on March 23rd. Delegate O'Malley, as chair of the committee, can you bring us a report from that meeting?
Meeting an hour later. The committee reviewed the fiscal year 2027 Regional Government Budget for Human Rights Advisory Commission, the Human Services Department, and the Health and Human Services Department. Present for our meetings were, of course, Administrator Michael Dutton, as well as the Human Rights Coordinator Leslie Dominguez Santos, Director of Human Services Joseph Pacheco, and his Deputy Director Mandy Speakman, and for the Health and Health Department, Director Jay Gardner and the Lab Director. The committee voted unanimously to favorably recommend all three budgets to the Finance Committee as proposed.
Next on the calendar is a report from the Standing Committee on Public Services meeting of March 25th, 2026. Delegate Gessen, as chair of the committee, can you give a report on that?
Absolutely. The Public Services Committee met and we discussed the budget for Children's Cove, for the dredge, for the Children's Cove, the dredge, and the Facilities Department. And the committee recommended all four of these budgets favorably and requested additional information through the clerk as to the dredge, including the increases in the line items from FY25 to FY26. In order to better understand why the miscellaneous line items and the supplies and service and contractual service line items increased between FY24 and FY25. And we're looking forward to better understanding those increases and the history behind them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is a report from the Standing Committee on Natural Resources, the meeting of March 25th. Delegate Gallagher, as Vice Chair of the committee, can you give us a report, please?
I'd be happy to, Madam Chair. Thank you. This was my first time chairing a committee meeting. The Assembly of Delegates Standing Committee on Natural Resources met remotely on Wednesday, March 25th at 5 p.m. The committee reviewed the fiscal year 2027 Cape Cod Regional Government budget for the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension and AmeriCorps Cape Cod program. The committee voted unanimously to favorably recommend both budgets to the Finance Committee as proposed. Regional Administrator Michael Dutton and Extension Director Mike McGuire appeared before the committee to discuss the fiscal year 2027 budget for the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension. The proposal includes a contingency fund for a potential department relocation in 2027. Program Manager Niemeyer and Director McGuire presented the fiscal year 2027 budget for AmeriCorps Cape Cod. Members agreed the budget is necessary to sustain the program's community service and emergency response efforts.
Thank you very much. Good job. Next is the only order of the day on our calendar is for this meeting is proposed ordinance 2026-07. Deputy Speaker Friesel, do you have a motion?
Madam Speaker, I do. And my motion is to postpone this again to our meeting date certain April 15, and I'll explain the reasons for that. We originally postponed this from our prior meeting in March because we needed some additional advice on the language of the resolution, which is contained in the ordinance for the bond authorization from bond counsel. We did get that, but bond counsel gave us language which was acceptable. But bond counsel then recommended that this be further reviewed by counsel for the Clean Water Trust. That has happened, but then the Council for Clean Water Trust recommended that we get a further review from the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP. And from what I understand as of the latest today from our county treasurer, we have not received the okay yet on the language from the DEP for the language in the resolution to float the bonds. So pending that, hopefully done in 2 weeks on April 15th, we should be prepared to approve the ordinance, unless there's any other update I'm not familiar with from the clerk. No.
So we have a motion and a second to postpone.
Second, yeah.
Huh?
Your mic's-
Oh,
Second.
it's okay.
you gotta shut your mic. Is there any discussion on that? Up. A delegate Harder, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Have we checked with Brian and Carol, and is postponing this even further going to affect having enough money to provide this service?
I see the administrator, we have checked, and the administrator, Mr. Dutton, is saying, no, it does not. Besides which, even so, you don't want to flaw in your authorization, because that could then become a problem in terms of the bond offering. So you really do have to make sure we get council's final say on this.
Just working with the dredge, the Mass DEP can take forever.
There is a motion. Thank you. There is a motion with a second to postpone proposed ordinance 2026-07 until the April 15th regular meeting. Oh, is there any discussion? Delegate
Yes.
Gessen.
This might be more of a question than discussion, but to whomever appropriate, do we anticipate another committee meeting in the interim around this, or is this going to be resolved before the meeting, and we're going to see it on the agenda on the 15th.
I would anticipate we just see it on the agenda. If the language is approved as is in its current state from DEP, that's fine. I mean, we've had a discussion of the substance. There's no Finance Committee problem with substance. It's merely making sure that the language is acceptable for the purpose of authorizing the bonds.
Got it. Thank you.
Is there any additional discussion? No? Okay. You're good, Deputy Speaker?
Yes.
Okay, the question is on postponing ordinance 2026-07. Clerk Fletcher, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Frizzell.
Yes.
Delegate Fuller.
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Delegate Gasson.
Yes.
Delegate Green. Delegate Harder.
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate King.
Yes.
Delegate McKelvey.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley. Yes. Dean Omen. Delegate Sampson.
Yes.
Delegate Ty.
Yes.
Speaker Warner.
Yes.
Been a long time, but it's still 13, representing 92.03% of the county's population, Madam Speaker.
Okay, the motion passes. Is there any new business? Okay,
I've got a couple of things. There is an ordinance that the board proposed. It's a aquafund cleanup. There's actually two resolutions that have to do with the rules and maybe getting less roll calls during the meeting, which I know some of you have asked for, and some slight changes to committee structure. So we won't be dealing with them at this meeting, obviously, but they have been distributed and
Okay.
they'll take a course. Don't mind. Your mic was off when you said that.
Clerk Fletcher?
Yep.
Announcement?
I don't have any other announcements other than we do have work to finish up Finance Committee recommendations on the budget. I anticipate, after I talk with our vice chair, who's here, and our chair, who, Dino, and who will be returning, I anticipate that we'll be meeting on Monday to hear reports from standing committee members and chairs on their deliberations, and also deal with the remaining budgets that are assigned directly to the Finance Committee for general government services, the Assembly, the Board, Finance Department, Shared Services. So we essentially only have 3 days to three Mondays or Wednesdays to finish the Finance Committee's work. The deadline that we have set for the Finance Committee report to the full Assembly is the 15th. And so Emma and I will be calling you and trying to figure out how we get those meetings done. And yep, that's it.
That's it. And I just want to give one quick update. I did speak briefly with Dylan Fernandez this afternoon, and he said that the petition, which they have, has been reviewed by most of the delegation, but they want everyone to weigh in because there are parts of the state that have similar types of requests that they want to roll into one big yeah. And he said that there is a bunch of new rules that they're being governed by this year that they're not familiar with. So it's taking a little bit longer because of the fact that they have to make sure that they follow these new rules and they're done in the right way. So but they're moving with it. And I think that's all I have. Do you have anything, Dan? Do you have
None here.
anything? No,
Nope.
okay. So if we're good.
Can I ask you?
Oh,
I'm
yes.
sorry. Again, did he give you an indication? I mean, they are going to be leaving session on July 31st. We are now at April 1st. Did he give any indication of when they can officially get through all these rules and have it in the hopper to be considered for this legislative session?
I will see. It took me a while to get anybody and not because it's just that apparently yesterday and the day before were extremely busy and there wasn't a lot of breaks in between. And it just so happened that Dylan called me about 2:30 this afternoon. So and that phone call which came in was Julian. So but you know, I will get back to Julian, who I didn't get to speak to, but I did appreciate the information from Dylan. And that's all. So if we could have a huh? Oh, yes.
Just for the record, this is what we warned about. We send a petition up. And the first thing we get back is, well, we got to look at all these other petitions to see how they might want to work together. And that's exactly it. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, I don't know that that's the only thing that we got back. I mean, there have been other communications, but it hasn't been, we have not yet. I have not yet, which is why I started calling too it after Owen was not getting any answers. And I know that Dan has been busy too. So, but I think we're good now. Now, you have something?
I was just wondering if he mentioned, there are about 8 regional based petitions. There are many regional based petitions plus towns home rule petitions. And I felt like the reason we did ours was to let them know we don't want anyone to take 50% and things like that. Did he say how many of the other bills that are up there? Is it all of them? Like all?
I don't
15.
know. He didn't, I didn't spend a lot of time on that because I wanted to kind of get an idea of what was going on with ours. He said, that he also advised me that it's not real, that a home charter,
Home rule petition.
home rule petition is what one community submits. It's not what, and this is, and it's going to involve several communities. So it has to be sure that the information is looked at carefully and decided upon. But he said they were getting very close. So I don't know what that means. But I'm thank you for those dates because I will use those when I speak with Julia. Anybody else? Okay, how about?
Move adjournment, Madam Speaker.
Second. Okay, let me see. I think.
Would you like a roll call, Madam Speaker?
Yes, I'm just quickly looking. I think that's where we are. Okay.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Freisel.
Yes.
Delegate Fuller.
Yeah.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Delegate Gessen.
Yes.
Delegate Green. Delegate Harder.
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate King.
Yes.
Delegate McKelvey.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley.
Yes.
Dean Omen, Delegate Sampson. Delegate Ty.
Yes.
Speaker Warner.
Yes.
Weird. No. Weird.
So. Adjourned.